Hi, these are the top 10 films of the mid-1930s, covering the years 1933 to 1936. Those are a lot of years to get it down to a top 10, and these are my personal favourite 10 films of this period, so there's a lot that I've missed out, so make sure to add your favourite films down in the comments below. Anyway, let's get on with the list. In at number 10, Bride of Frankenstein. One of the first examples of a sequel being better than the original. The title says The Bride of Frankenstein, which would actually be this character, as Frankenstein is the scientist. Colin Clive and Boris Karloff are back as Frankenstein and his monster, and are as good as ever. The film is most remembered for the enduring image of Elsa Lanchester as the monstrous bride. What is interesting is that the dead bride only appears at the end for 3 minutes. She based her performance on the swans in London parks, saying that they're really very nasty creatures. Lanchester also plays Mary Shelley in a prologue which seems to show the real-life author living in a haunted castle. It's a really odd film, and you can tell director James Whale is having a lot of fun. There are strange little touches, such as an elongated scene where another mad scientist has made a collection of tiny people that he keeps in jars. The body count is up, and so are the horror elements. One problem with the film, though, is the performance of Una O'Connor, an Irish character actor who just screams throughout the whole thing. They bizarrely choose to have her in more scenes than either Frankenstein or his monster. Her screaming's really annoying and takes a lot of the tension out of the picture. Well, here's hoping she doesn't ruin any more pictures from this period. In at number 9, The Invisible Man. She's in this as well, screaming away in every scene she's in. Why on earth would you put her in these classic horror movies? Imagine if she was in The Exorcist. Or The Shining.
Here's Johnny!
Well, she's not the only one who's back. This was also directed by James Whale and is my favourite of his pictures. Claude Rains plays the titular character and is perfect in the role. I love the character of Griffin. He's a horrid little psychopath. Of course, Rains' voice does most of the hard work. Behind his bandages and costume, he has this wonderful, erratic energy to him. I prefer this film to H.G. Wells' original novel, simply because in the book Griffin says he will start a reign of terror, but never gets to do it. Well, in the film, they show the reign, and it's certainly terrifying. He even derails a bloody train. Top-notch special effects and solid direction make this one of the great Universal horror movies. In at number 8, Swing Time. My favourite Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers picture is also my favourite musical from this period. Of course, the dance numbers are astonishing, truly something to behold. The climactic dance number was so intense, and they filmed it so many times, that when Ginger Rogers took off her shoes, they were filled with blood. The music is great, and in particular, The Way You Look Tonight, which would go on to win the Best Original Song at the Oscars. The comedy here is what I think raises this above the other musicals of this period. Victor Moore and Helen Broderick are hilarious in it. The love story between Astaire and Rogers is also more involving than in a lot of their other pictures. In Top Hat, Astaire just pesters her until she falls for him. In fact, in Top Hat, his character is insufferable. He goes to a club where the whole point of the place is to be quiet and just starts tap dancing. Or he goes to a hotel and dances late at night, keeping everyone awake. What's a tosser? The 1930s was when Hollywood really came into its own. After the Great Depression, people wanted light entertainment, and Hollywood knew how to churn out entertainment that wasn't too taxing on the brain. Germany, who had been making such amazing films for a few decades, suddenly wasn't making classics anymore. With the Nazi Party in power, many of the great filmmakers had fled. Joseph Goebbels was so impressed with Metropolis that he had offered Fritz Lang the position of the head of Nazi cinema propaganda. Well, Lang declined and moved to America to continue making great films, such as 1936's Fury. Meanwhile, in Germany, films took a turn for the right wing. 1935's Triumph of the Will is an astonishing piece of horrid propaganda. It's quite bizarre if you compare American and German cinema from that period.
Und in eurem jungen Gehirn brennt derselbe Geist, der uns beherrscht. Nur die besten Nationalsozialisten sind Parteigenossen.
Anyway, I've got sidetracked. Swing Time's a lot of fun. In at number 7, The Informer. Oh no, Una O'Connor is back, but she's fine in this. This is one of John Ford's first great pictures, and is also one of the earliest films about the Irish War of Independence. It was based on the novel by socialist writer Liam O'Flaherty, who was a cousin of Ford's. You can tell that this is a subject that Ford felt passionately about. Set on one night in Dublin, we follow Gippo, brilliantly played by the hulking Victor McLagan. Money is tight, and after seeing his prostitute girlfriend trying to pick up a customer, he vows that they'll get enough money to sail away to America. So he rats on his IRA comrade, who is killed in a brilliant sequence. Gippo now has 20 quid in his pocket, but also incredible guilt, and he spends most of the night drinking and getting into fights. It's a great film because more often than not the Judas character in a story is simply a twist or just the villain. Here he's the protagonist, and we see the torment he goes through, as well as sort of wanting him to get away with it. John Ford was a hell of a director, and this is one of his best films. In at number 6, Osaka Elegy. This is the first notable work of Kenji Mizoguchi, one of the best Japanese directors of all time. Like most of his films, this deals with the hardship of women. It tells the story of a telephone operator played by the fantastic Isuzu Yamada. Although she has no money, she tries to help her father, who has been caught embezzling, and her brother, who needs help paying his college fees. She becomes a mistress to wealthy men in order to do this, and even though her family take the money, they turn their back on her. It's powerful stuff, and a great example of Mizoguchi's interests. There is a discussion of whether Mizoguchi was a sadist to his female characters, as he puts them through so much, or whether he was simply highlighting their plight. I believe it to be the latter. When Mizoguchi was a child, he witnessed his father's brutal treatment of his mother and sisters, and his older sister, Sazuko, was sold into prostitution. Telling the stories of women who suffered similar fates became his life work. He was a director with something to say, and he did it in a tragic and beautiful way. In at number 5, Modern Times. Charlie Chaplin retires the tramp character in style. Chaplin was such a great artist, and his films covered many different years and topics. In 1918 he released Shoulder Arms, about the First World War, and in 1940 he would make The Great Dictator, dealing with Hitler and other fascist leaders from the period. And here in Modern Times he deals with the Great Depression. Apparently he decided to tackle this subject after a conversation with Gandhi. This film shows the desperation of those out of work, the hardship many faced in work, and how industrialization had turned people into simple cogs in a machine. The final shot, where the tramp and the orphan girl set off into the landscape of America with no money or prospects, is a very powerful ending. It doesn't sound like a barrel of laughs, but it is. It's full of amazing comedic set pieces. My favourite scene is when Chaplin is used as a test dummy for a new machine to make eating easier. Chaplin also wrote the beautiful score to the film. In the 1950s, lyrics were added to the love theme, which became the Nat King Cole hit Smile.
Smile.
The filmmaking here is top-notch, and the effects are very advanced for the period, so it is striking that Chaplin keeps the tramp a silent character. He was clearly stubborn, and kept most of the film basically a silent comedy. Chaplin said that if the tramp spoke it would ruin the character. Maybe that's why this was the last film to feature his famous alter ego, but what a way to go out. In at number 4, It Happened One Night. one of the all-time great romantic comedies. Frank Capra directs this story of a spoilt socialite who, against her father's wishes and with the help of a streetwise journalist, tries to travel from Miami to New York to reunite with her husband. On the way, the writer and the pampered rich kid begin to fall in love. Claudette Colbert and Clark Gable couldn't be better cast. They are both fantastic in it and have instant chemistry together. Capra was a genius at making films that were schmaltzy but undeniably charming and entertaining. This film would go on to win all the major awards at the Oscars. Best Actor, Actress, Director, Screenplay and Film, all of which were totally deserved. Tremendous fun. In at number 3, The Only Son. Well, this is not what I'd call fun. Ozu's first talkie tells a very human tale about a mother and son. The film begins with the son asking his mother if he can leave the small town and get his education in Tokyo, where his teacher is moving to. Even though she can't really afford it, she agrees. We cut forward 13 years. She's worked the entire time in a silk factory and has sold her house. She visits her son in Tokyo to find that he is living in poverty, having failed to make it in the big city. Even his teacher is now running a struggling tonkatsu restaurant in an industrial area. It's a tragic film, but a truthful one, about family, love, sacrifice, and about the people who are often forgotten about in fiction, the people who gamble and lose. A beautifully tragic film by a master filmmaker. In number 2, Ludland. This is a stunningly strange and romantic film. Juliette has married Jean, the captain of a barge, and they begin their life together on the boat, along with the eccentric Jules and a dim-witted boy. Life isn't all she hoped it would be. Despite moments of joy here and there, it's a tough life, and all she wants to do is go and see Paris. There are wonderfully odd details, and the film is full of character. It would go on to become one of the main inspirations for the directors of the French New Wave. And I would go further, saying you can even see its influence in Jacques Tati's work and all the way up to the films of Jeunet and Caro. It's pretty groundbreaking. Romantic, bizarre and funny. Jean Vigo was so ahead of his time. His previous film, Zero for Conduct, would go on to directly influence the film If, which itself was considered ahead of its time in 1968. Vigo only made 2 feature films. He had contracted tuberculosis in the 1920s and was very sick during the production of Ludland, and died the year it came out at the age of 29. It's a tragedy, and we can only wonder what sort of films he would have continued to make had he lived longer. And in at number 1, King Kong. The story of the giant ape who falls in love with a blonde actress and falls to his death from the Empire State Building is one of the great film tales. It's so well known and iconic that it feels like it must have existed in some form or another before the 1933 release. But it didn't. This is one of the most iconic and important films of all time. And aside from that, it's also bloody good fun. The scenes on Skull Island are incredibly exciting, and there's a real sense of adventure. The climax in New York is thrilling and tragic, and there is a sense of scale here which is almost unparalleled up to this point in cinema. Imagine reading the script in 1932. You'd say it's impossible. But they had the skill to pull off their ambitious script. The special effects are groundbreaking, and it does the astonishing job of making the monster a real character. Kong has so much humanity in his face that you instantly care for him. In many ways, he's the most relatable character in the film. Fay Wray screams a lot, and Bruce Cabot plays a smug sexist.
Women just can't help being a bother. Made that way, I guess.
It is a character that has not lost any of its impact in nearly 100 years. I mean, Godzilla vs. Kong is one of the highest grossing films of this year. It's not the highest grossing film so far though. That honour belongs to the Chinese film Hi Mum. King Kong is filmmaking at its best. A real cinematic adventure that manages to make a strange story seem timeless.
It wasn't the airplanes. It was beauty killed the beast.
Right, so counting down my top 10. In at number 10, The Bride of Frankenstein. In at number 9, The Invisible Man. In at number 8, Swing Time. In at number 7, The Informer. In at number 6, Osaka Elegy. In at number 5, Modern Times. In at number 4, It Happened One Night. In at number 3, The Only Son. In at number 2, Ludland. And in at number 1, King Kong. Well, those are my top 10 films from 1933 to 1936. I've missed out so many great films, so what are some of your favourite films from the years 1933 through to 1936? Cheers.